Welcome back, Black Knight Scholars. Mr. Deegan here with another edition of VidNotes. We're still studying Unit 7, World War I. We're on to Lesson 3, and we're talking today about the aftermath of World War I, the outcomes, the results, the effects. After the fighting ends and these soldiers return home, how does the world move forward? We're going to be talking about the Treaty of Versailles, which was one of the most important peace treaties of world history because of what it led to. And we're going to answer these two guiding questions today. How did the world recover and heal after its first global war? And question number 2, how did the recovery plan plant the seeds for a second world war? We have to remember that the colonies of European countries fought in World War I. For example, 1 million soldiers from India fought, and if you remember, India is still a colony of Britain during this time. In addition, African colonies contributed soldiers to the World War I fighting effort. This is Cameroon soldiers, and Cameroon was a colony in Southwest Africa owned by Germany during World War I. So they fought for the Germans. And all across the continent of Africa, you see different colonies contributing soldiers to the war effort. As a result of their World War I service, these colonies increased their demands for independence after the war ended. India, you see Indian soldiers here training for chemical warfare, and African colonies both want to be free. They shed blood. They had soldiers die on the battlefield. Why not become independent? That's what they were asking their European powers. What were the human costs of World War I? Many soldiers died on the battlefield. In fact, the grand total of casualties was more than 37 million people. And who experienced the greatest number of casualties? Well, you see here Russia, 9 million soldiers either died or were wounded in battle. France, more than 6 million soldiers either died or were wounded in battle. And if you look at the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary both have over 7 million soldiers dead or wounded in battle. Now, if you look at who experienced the greatest percentage-wise, look at Russia. More than 76% of all of its soldiers experienced a casualty. Look at Germany. More than 60% of its soldiers either died or were wounded. Look at Austria-Hungary. 90% of its soldiers experienced a casualty of some kind. The human costs of World War I were great because the technology was advanced and soldiers were not ready for that technology. Let's look at a pie graph. You see civilians were also killed in great numbers. So World War I deaths. 22% of all deaths were Central Power civilians. 20% of all deaths were Allied Power civilians. Let's go to the financial costs of World War I. It was a very pricey war. $125 billion. That was the total cost of the war. How expensive was the war for the United States? It cost the United States $22.6 billion. Among the Allied powers, Great Britain paid the greatest financial cost with $35 billion. Germany spent $37 billion during World War I. The war was costly financially. World War I creates the end of 3 powerful world empires: the Russian Imperial Empire, the Austria-Hungary Empire, which is located here south of the German Empire. Here's Italy. Here is the Middle East. It is no more after World War I. Also, the Ottoman Empire comes to an end after World War I, and the land, pictured here in white, is split up. The Treaty of Versailles of 1919 was World War I's peace treaty. Versailles, here it is. It is just west of Paris in France. And if you remember, the Palace of Versailles was built by the absolute monarch French King Louis XIV, with all of its fountains and all of its grandeur and wealth. And it is here where the leaders of Britain, France, America, and others meet to discuss the Treaty of Versailles. And here is the US President Woodrow Wilson at the bargaining table. He is one of the leaders of this peace treaty. What were the terms of the Treaty of Versailles? There are 4 different categories in the terms. 1 dealt with land, 2 dealt with military, 3 dealt with blame, and 4 dealt with money. Let's look at these 4 more closely. The Treaty of Versailles, term number 1, land. Territorial losses. Germany must return Alsace-Lorraine to France. And the French border extended to west bank of the Rhine River. So this red slice of land is Alsace-Lorraine, and Germany has to give that back to France after World War I. Germany also must surrender all of its overseas colonies in Africa. You see all of those in orange. And the Pacific, Papua New Guinea, the Marshall Islands, and more of these pieces of land. Germany must give them up. Term of the Treaty of Versailles, number 2, military. Military restrictions. The Treaty of Versailles limits the size of the German army. It also says that Germany is prohibited from importing or manufacturing weapons or any kind of war material. And Germany is forbidden to build or buy submarines or have an air force. So the Treaty of Versailles says Germany must weaken its military. The 3rd term of the Treaty of Versailles assigns blame, war guilt. The sole responsibility for the war is placed on Germany. How is that? Is that someone's opinion? No, this is Article 231 of the Versailles Treaty itself. It says, the Allied and associated governments affirm, and Germany accepts the responsibility of Germany and her allies for causing all the loss and damage to which the Allied and associated governments and their nationals have been subjected as a consequence of the war imposed upon them by the aggression of Germany and her allies. That is the official language of this treaty. The 4th term of the Treaty of Versailles has to do with money. Germany is forced to pay the Allies $33 billion in reparations over the course of 30 years. What is reparations? It's paying money to right a wrong you have done. And you see this political cartoon showing this man, Germany, who has to bear the burden of this huge amount of money. And Germany finishes paying its World War I reparations not in 5 years, not in 10 years. It takes Germany 92 years to pay off its World War I reparations. This is an article dated October 4th, 2010. And it says, to some historians, World War I ended Sunday. So it pays its final $94 million payment 92 years after World War I. We have to remember, how did World War I start? Germany didn't start it. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia on July 28, 1914, and later on, Germany joins Austria-Hungary because they are allies. Germany didn't start this war. So the question becomes, were the Allied powers fair to Germany with the terms of the Treaty of Versailles? I'll leave that historical interpretation to you. Here's a political cartoon that shows Germany being squeezed after World War I. Here are the big four powers, the Allied powers who helped negotiate the Treaty of Versailles, and they say you've got to swallow it whether you like it or not. And here are the peace terms being shoved down Germany's throat. Now, Germany is angry, of course. Some of this anger leads to the rise of the Nazis during and before World War II. More on that in a later unit. We are nearly done with lesson 3, ladies and gentlemen. We have but our summary questions remaining. Please do them now. And a preview of next lesson, the League of Nations, which was US President Woodrow Wilson's idea. How can we create a lasting peace? Wilson talks about that. Until that time, this is Mr. Deegan signing off.